Although we are inclined to think of the great apostle, Paul did not have an inflated sense of his own ability. He knew that God had called him and equipped him for service, but he also knew that he had no personal sufficiency. At the end of chapter 2, he asked the question, who is sufficient for these things, in verse 16 of chapter 2. In the verses that we're going to read in 2 Corinthians chapter 3, verses 1 to 6, we actually have the answer to that particular question. Do we begin again to commend ourselves, or need we, as some others, epistles of commendation to you, or letters of commendation from you? Ye are our epistle written in our hearts, known and read of all men. For as much as ye are manifestly declared to be the epistle of Christ ministered by us, written not with ink, but with the Spirit of the living God, not in tables of stone, but in fleshy tables of the heart, and such trust have we through Christ to Godward. Not that we are sufficient of ourselves to think anything as of ourselves, but our sufficiency is of God, who also hath made us able ministers of the New Testament, not of the letter, but of the Spirit. For the letter killeth, but the Spirit giveth life. Nowadays it seems that everyone has to be able to demonstrate on a piece of paper that they are qualified to do whatever the job might be. If you're looking for a mortgage and the house you're wanting to buy needs electrical work done to it, the mortgage provider will probably require you to get an electrician who is registered by the National Inspection Council for Electrical Installation Contracting. What a mouthful. NICEIC. You cannot use the tried and trusty electrician who's done all your work for the past 40 years, a local man who always does above and beyond the call of duty, unless he has that bit of paper. The piece of paper at times seems to be more important than the reliability or dependability of the workman. Now, the Apostle Paul isn't a great believer in having the piece of paper in every case. That's why he asks the question, need we, as some others, epistles of commendation to you, or letters of commendation from you, in verse 1. Yes, there were those, some who were unknown or scarcely known to the believers at Corinth, who ought to bring a letter of commendation. And that, of course, is the reason why we employ letters of commendation when visiting other assemblies of God's people. But Paul was not such a person. Now, why was this that he didn't have to bring a letter? Now, first of all, he doesn't say that it was because he was an apostle or because he was a preacher. Rather, he says, ye are our epistle written in our hearts, or perhaps written in your hearts, known and read of all men, in verse 2. Paul had no need to commend himself to the Corinthians with a letter because the fact of their salvation was commendation enough. Ye are manifestly declared to be the epistle of Christ ministered by us, in verse 3. It was not mere words of commendation, but real evidence of his commendation. He had proved himself to them. They knew about the genuineness of his service. It was like a letter written in fleshy tables of the heart, also in verse 3. Signed not by men, but as if by Christ. It's the epistle of Christ, a letter that was delivered by Paul himself. This letter was written not with ink, but with the Spirit of the living God, also verse 3. A living letter, both in what it was written with and what it was written on. In answer to the question, who is sufficient, Paul could declare our sufficiency is of God in verse 5. So let me challenge us all with this question. As we serve God, do we do it with self-confidence because we have qualifications? Do we think anything as of ourselves in verse 5? Or do we serve in the consciousness that it is God who also hath made us able ministers in verse 6? Do we serve with a willingness to be used by God? You see, we have nothing of which to be proud because we are nothing of ourselves. Our only sufficiency must be from God himself.